Hey there, and welcome to another Nerdy Reviews. I'm the Absolute Nerd, and today we'll be reviewing Mobile Suit Gundam Seed, Seed Special Edition movies, and Seed Destiny. I don't have the images up here, but trust me when we get through this here. Before I begin, though, if you're watching this on Twitch, make sure to follow me on my Twitch channel. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to follow like this video, subscribe to my channel, and leave a comment down below. I want to hear from you guys. What did you guys think about Seed and Seed Destiny, or the Seed movies? Did you like them? Did you hate them? Did you think my opinions are garbage or not? I want to hear from you guys. Leave a comment down below. And just for a heads up, and I just want to make this a precursor for y'all, going forward, if you see this in the video, I'm going to be giving you guys about a good 5 to 10 second warning that I will be doing spoilers in regards to Seed and Seed Destiny. Normally with my reviews, I like to cover just the basis of the series here, just so I can keep it spoiler free. But I know some of you want to hear some spoilers or hear me talk about it, so I'm going to be adding in those portions. Just keep an eye out for this little banner here, and I will be leaving a little smaller banner right there for you guys. And if you don't see that banner anymore, it is absolutely safe for you to unmute or not fast forward any further. So yeah, just want to let you guys be aware about that. Otherwise, let's go ahead and begin with the review. So just real brief, like how we always start off here, but let's start off with the story for Mobile Suit Gundam Seed. So Seed takes place in the Cosmic Era 70. Kira Yamato, our main character right here, and his friends are plunged into a war between Earth Alliance and Zap when Zap forces invade their neutral colony to hijack hidden Gundams there. That's the basis of the story, and it actually develops far more than that. It's actually not terribly that bad of a story. Not going to spoil too much about that, though. Now, regarding the series itself, this is a 50-episode series that was originally aired and released on October 5th of 2002 in Japan. It was later then aired in the United States in 2004. This was also basically the second wave or second coming of Gundam to the United States, which brought in a lot of new fans, or rather a lot of seedlings. I have a little disposition on that too. If you haven't watched my previous live stream review, I did talk a little bit about, I put it as much as why I hated Gundam Seed and Seed Destiny. I'm going to capsize it for you guys here real quick after I get a little bit of more facts for you guys here, just so you guys can get a little bit of an idea. It's kind of a strange coming back to me watching Seed. I was not very excited, I'll tell you that right now, as any of you who watched my previous live stream reviews, how terribly excited I am for Seed. Anyways, though, like I was saying, though, when this was aired back in 2004 on the Toonami block for the United States and in Canada, this brought a second wave of new Gundam fans. Previously, of course, with Gundam Wing being released in 2000, or if I'm not mistaken, 2001, no, 2000. It did bring in the original wave of Gundam fans. Of course, a lot of other subsequent shows that got released on Toonami also brought in other fans too. But nothing as significant as it was with Gundam Seed. In fact, Gundam Seed was one of the bigger releases, not only in the United States, but in Japan as well. It was a highly acclaimed and highly relevated series, stating that, like, hey, this is like the biggest thing for Gundam, it's the biggest, best thing ever, that sort of thing. There are some other things regarding this series. It's not widely spoken about, but it's often acknowledged that Gundam Seed is actually kind of like a re-imaging or retelling of the original Mobile Suit Gundam. In fact, a lot of story elements were featured in Gundam Seed. I'll talk about that in a little bit as well, too. And just before I dive a little bit more into the fun little portions review, I just want to recap with y'all my original hatred for Seed and my comments into doing this again here. Originally, when I watched Seed, I had a very, very bad experience. My first introduction to Seed was actually buying a bootleg copy of it because I was so desperate to get my hands on Seed as a young person. I had no idea what a bootleg was or anything like that. This bootleg had really, really bad fan subs, and I was very, very confused about what I had just watched. Other than watching the very, very cool action of Gundam Seed, which it has a lot of it, I had no idea what was going on in the story, with the bad subbings of telling what's going on and the characters as well. A really good example of something I could remember specifically about it was that Lacus Klein in the series is not called Lacus in this fan sub. Her name was Crisscross. Yes, Crisscross. And I hope if anybody who remembers this, back in the day, I was used to surf on GameFAQs, the mecha forums for Gundam, and I had asked about, hey, could anyone explain to me what I had watched with Gundam Seed? And I was absolutely ridiculed for even mentioning some bad plot points about it or whatnot because I couldn't figure it out. And like, who's Crisscross? You know, the pink-haired girl, the one that sings. You mean Lacus? Crisscross. I mean, I gotta hear the name Lacus, but I don't speak Japanese, so yeah, so that left a really, really bad experience for me. And the thing was that I'm immune to spoilers for the most part. I don't care about spoilers unless it's really, really significant, like Saw level of spoilers, or maybe Game of Thrones. I'll throw that out there, right? But spoilers I don't really care for. I am not immune to hype. Gundam Seed, when it was released back in 2002, was hyped up like crazy. So once I got my hands on the bootleg and then watched a very, very bad fan sub and tried to get some help from the fans. Man, the Gundam fan community is not very friendly back in the day. Left a very, very sour taste for me when it came to Seed. I did come back to rewatch Seed again in the box set form. Unfortunately, when I had originally watched it, it was a few years after it had aired on Toonami. A lot of people were talking about like, oh hey, Seed is so great, the voice acting's so fantastic. I had watched it and I wasn't impressed at all. I didn't like it. I think I was still bitter and more biased than anything else. Today, I'm not as biased as anymore, and like a critic, I'm able to disassociate my personal feelings from what I'm actually watching. For the most part. You can tell I'm still a little bit bitter, and I'm just trying to be a good sport about this. So that was my experience with Seed. Wasn't that great? And I'll talk a little bit about Seed Destiny 2. About a few years later, Seed Destiny came out, finally came out to the United States. Again, hype for Seed Destiny. The greatest anime ever, or greatest Gundam anime ever, gets the greatest sequel ever. You gotta watch, you can't wait. So I ended up buying the Seed Destiny. I mean, I'm a huge Gundam fan, so I buy a lot of stuff for Gundam related products. Unfortunately, another thing I don't like, well, I can handle episodic things, back in the day, if you were a Toonami kid like myself back in the 90s, the early 2000s, watching everything episodically every single day, right? And if you're a comic book reader, you're familiar with this too, where you would read a comic book issue about an episode or so forth, taking its time, right? So you go 1 month to next month. Unfortunately, that doesn't bode well for me when it comes to anime. When Gundam Seed Destiny was originally released, it was released volume by volume, almost month by month, or a couple months ahead or so. So I would watch a volume, completely forget what happened there, pick up the next volume, watch that, completely forget what happened afterwards. It was a very terrible experience because it was a very disjointed watch, and I couldn't piece things together, and everything just felt like a really big mess when it came to Seed Destiny. So it's been a little bit over a decade, and I still had a lot of pent-up hatred, and it just seemed to be like something that just kind of like, like postered onto the wall. It's nothing really there, but as soon as I look back to it, I'm like, oh, I remember how much I hate this series. So there and be trying to keep everything short. It's funny, I say long story short, and I'm still long-winded. Granted, it's not as long-winded as my other live stream. But that was my experiences with Seed and Seed Destiny, and I generally, for a long time, for over a decade, had vehemently hated Seed and Seed Destiny. I hated a lot of the fans of Seed, or Seedlings. I hated them to death, and I hated this series to death. Okay, maybe that's a hyperbole, an exaggeration of it, but I really hated it. Fast forward to, a few months ago, I keep hinting to I might watch Gundam Seed, because I'm doing the whole Gundam franchise. a lot of family and friends were just encouraging me, like, hey, you know what? You watched it years ago. They heard my story. They heard the longer version of the story. And like, hey, Brisson, you really didn't really get a good experience watching it. Just give it a second chance. It's been more than a decade. You got your analytical abilities and skills and stuff like that. Watch it now. Give it a shot. And some of my friends who are fans of Seed were trying to urge me and nudge me to do it. As much as I bash Seed and Seed Destiny like crazy, a lot of them never really turned me down, because a lot of the points that I hated Seed and Seed Destiny for, I wasn't far off. Which, it's kind of funny, I'm not terribly far off as of today, but I think I might have exaggerated a little bit in the past. That being said, gave it a shot now. Just for my family, friends, and for, of course, you guys who are watching, I dug up my old DVDs, not Blu-rays, because, as I showed in my previous live streams, the Blu-rays for Seed and Seed Destiny right now are like $225, which I am not going to shell out at this time. Doesn't mean I won't buy it. Yes, I hate it, and I will be willing to buy it. Actually, it's a little of a change of story, but hey, no spoilers here, right? Of the review, at least. So when it came to watching it again, pulled up all my DVDs, I actually found out I had also my special editions still. I do want to disclaim, though. So like I said, I'm reviewing Seed Special Edition movies, and Seed Destiny. Unfortunately, I will not be reviewing the Seed Destiny movies. I only had 2 of the 4. If I'm not mistaken here, Bandai didn't really completely release them at the time, and I didn't realize it. I guess it probably had happened, but maybe I had to do a little bit more research into this. But I believe, because I know that Bandai of America dissolved itself and no longer held licensing rights to release Gundam material. That's why years later, Right Stuff picked up the rights for Gundam and started releasing it in Blu-ray format. So again, this is all a little bit of a long story short, but still kind of long version of why I hated Seed and Seed Destiny. Just want to give you guys a premise. Again, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm coming into this clear-eyed, not biased at all. Although some of that hatred's still going to be there. Hey, I'm only human, right? Anyways, so let's just get all that out of the way. I want to talk really briefly on the animation. And I'm not mistaken here, and I couldn't really find really good screenshots. I didn't take any screenshots from my DVDs just yet. That's to be done later on. I believe this is actually a screenshot from the HD version, because it looks a lot more cleaner and rezzed up. To give you an idea, though, if you do a little bit of a search, you'll see what I'm saying, because the HD version, you'll see it has a little bit more of a cleaner view. The original one that was released in 2002 has a little bit more of a grainier, a little bit more washed out colors. Here with the HD version, though, it's a little bit more sharper with the lines and a little bit more contrasty with the coloring. But the animation of Seed is actually not that bad. I really liked a lot of the animation. It was the first Gundam series outside of the original, not original, but back in 1999. If you remember my review for Turn A Gundam, it was the last hand-drawn Gundam series before Seed came out. When Seed came out, it started utilizing like digital composition and digital animation. So we kind of get a lot of like what looks. I'm not 100% certain this. Correct me if I'm wrong, folks. But it does still utilize some animation that we're familiar to. Again, also utilizing digital animation. More of the digital animation is more noticeable, though, when we get to the ships, like the Archangel or anything like that. Most of those are kind of like 3D-esque images. But funny enough, because not too long before that, 3D stuff such as MS Igloo had came out, and it looked like a hot melty mess. The animation in Seed actually... Oh, the 3D animation scene is actually not bad at all. The Archangel scenes are actually kind of cool and neat. I have no complaints about it, even though it looks a little bit more displaced. Oddly enough, it works. Because unlike when I had watched, like, Gundam Origin or anything like that, where a lot of the CGI animation that's placed on top of the 2D animation, or what would be the digital cell or whatnot, looked really, really awkward and weird. With Seed, though, a lot of the shots with the Archangel are kept within, like, on land, sea, or air. Nothing really too much with the animation itself. Although sometimes it does do it, it's not frequent enough. So it's not really noticeable. The only thing I really did not like about Seed's animation, not necessarily the animation itself, but the character designs. I wouldn't say I hate, but I don't like the character designs. The best I have right now here is Athrun and Kira. If you look at their faces, they're very different from a lot of the faces that we see in any other Gundam series previously. A lot of Gundam series before, so let's just say 1999 and below, or 1979 all the way to 1999, had a very familiar artistic style, like character design style, right? Even though each series is done in a different animation style itself, the character designs are relatively similar or almost the same. Come to Seed though, that completely changes. So what we have is a lot of like effeminate features, a lot of like what I want to call like 2000s or 2000s anime look. Not a huge fan of this style. It's almost clanted, not clanted, like yeah, it's kind of clanted or like clamp-esque animation. Again, not a huge fan of that one. It's got these like weird little like curvatures to the face, the weird little points. It's okay. Honestly, I don't like how a lot of the characters look or anything like that just based off of this character designing. That's basically it. Again, way too effeminate looking. Reminds you of clamp or clanted-esque animation, which I'm not a huge fan of. It's just a style I don't like. That's just me. I get if other people do like it, and actually this is kind of like what a little bit of the appeal for Seed itself too. Back in the 2000s, not a whole lot of animations like this, but a lot of animation kind of tend to go into this manner or form. There's other aspects of Gundam Seed that a lot of modern fans of that time frame really liked regarding Gundam Seed, and that's what got them attracted to Gundam Seed, what made Gundam Seed actually pretty large itself. But that's pretty much all I have to say about the animation itself. Music. I wish I could have like some of the music playing in the background, but then I'm going to get slammed with something because as much as I hated Gundam Seed back in the day, I really love a lot of Seed's music. From the openings to the endings, the inner music, fantastic. A lot of J-poppy-esque music, even super melodramatic music. And I'm going to talk about that too, because that melodramatic music is a double-edged sword for this series. But I cannot say without a doubt, like, the music that Seed uses, fantastic. Between character dialogues, the action sequences, everything. Music flows so well and so beautifully, and dare I say it, it's one of my top tier like anime musics. It's like right up there with Gundam Wing. I think Gundam Wing slightly edges it out just because there's a lot more music that I liked from Gundam Wing as an overall, but Seed is like right up there. There is no other Gundam series that I could think where I'm like, I'm that enamored with the music. A lot of the music too in Seed really gets you into the to the atmosphere of what you're watching. Seed kind of tackles different atmospheres, so it's really hard to pinpoint it down. But they utilize a lot of the music to really set that atmospheric tone, and it goes from like super crazy action, like very exciting music, to very somber, melodramatic type music that really pulls at you at times. So I think, not that I think, it's just the music. Great job, great utilization of the music in Seed. I do also want to say, and it's a little bit of a joke too, but I think Seed, and I'll even say about Seed Destiny 2, probably has the most Gundam openings ever. I can't think of any other Gundam series. I think the only ones that might come across it might be, and when I come across watching it, at least, again, I think the closest ones would be like Gundam 00 or Iron Blooded Orphan, because up until this point, you know, from 1979 to 1999, Gundam series might have like maybe 2 openings, 2 endings, right? Seed and Seed Destiny have 4 openings and endings themselves. So I was a little bit impressed about that. I might miscalculate that again with Seed Destiny. Actually, I think Seed Destiny had 3. I know for a fact Seed has 4 openings and endings though. I can't remember about Seed Destiny necessarily, but I was still impressed about like how many openings and closings this series had. And I was like, wow, it constantly kept changing. But there you have it with the music. Uh, Dubbing is another thing that I want to talk about this series. A lot of people keep praising Seed for the dubbing, or at least Seedlings kept praising it about the dubbing. Here's what I have to say about the dubbing itself. It's all right. Honestly, it's all right. Back then I wasn't so keen on noticing voices because I'm getting familiar with a lot of the voices, right? But Seed actually utilized a lot of familiar like voice actors that we've heard from previous Gundam series. So it was nice to hear voices like Brad Swaley, Scott McNeil, Brian Drummond, those voices. There are some of them, and I'll talk in just a little bit, but most of the voices, familiar voices from other Gundam series, come back either in smaller roles or in like side roles for the most part too in Gundam Seed. There are, and this is where it's like most of the voice acting is all right. It's not phenomenal, it's not fantastic because the ones that we're familiar with, they're not the main characters, so we don't get to hear them often enough. But we hear them as like crew members or certain types of captains or commanders, or we hear them like other not villain of the day kind of things, but like side characters basically. Like if I'm not mistaken here, Brian Drummond Brian Drummond voices for Andrew Waltfield, for an example. So that's a familiar voice as a side character. However, there are other character voices that I just did not care for. And let me put it this way, all the voice actors do a great job as their characters. I just felt like they do a great job of acting, but their voices are not perfect for the characters. Like the voice casting for the English dub could have chosen some better voice actors or actresses. Some characters in my mind that stick out where I just don't like their voices at all. Cara is number one on my list. Flay, although I love Tabitha St. Germain in My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, I don't like her voice as Flay. Cogly, I do not like Cogly at all. And Lacus, I don't know, because she's supposed to be all that kind of like cheery or whatnot, but the voice actress for Lacus just, the voice does not match the body, and Lacus does have singing moments, and even though they use a different voice actress for the singing portions, it didn't work out. I did not like any of these voice actors or actresses for their characters. They just didn't fit that well. Kira came off too whiny at times and too like, Cogly just was like chalk on, or like nails on a chalkboard. I mean, good voice actress. She captured some of those, and it's funny. That's why I say like, because there's specific moments in the series where these characters really capture the moment, right? Like probably the casting director or directors heard their voices and like, you're perfect for this scene. Like 10% of what I need you for is right here. The other 90%, you don't fit at all. But we want you for that 10%. And that's what I felt like with these voice actors and voice actors and actresses. I can't tell you how much. Although if you really want to ask me if there's a voice actor I did like besides old school actors, I think Atherin's voice actor was actually pitch perfect for him. I think he did a great job capturing a lot of range with Atherin. Can't speak for anybody else. Kira's one that annoys me out, but then again, you hear Kira's voice most of the time. So yeah, it is what it is. Sound effects in the series is nice. I mean, just like every other Gundam series, you're either gonna hear a lot of familiar sound effects, like the Gundam beam rifle, or Gundam like mecha or Gundam motions. So it's nice to hear it all. Sometimes you get, I mean, you're obviously gonna hear a rehash, but the one thing that kind of drove me nuts is the Star Wars sound effects. I don't mind when it borrows from like other anime, like Votoms or anything like that. It drove me a little bit more nuts when I heard from Star Wars, particularly for the Strike Dagger's beam rifles. Whenever I hear the Strike Daggers shoot their beam rifles, the first time I heard, like, that sounds like an X-Wing, or like the Stormtroopers, like, I think it was a E-15 or something, I can't remember what it was called exactly, the E-15 blaster, their normal blaster rifle, sounds, no wait, not like that, more like an X-Wing or a TIE Fighter, it's one of the two. I have to listen to the sound effects in my head, but like the sound effect is specifically from Star Wars. Funny enough, the director, Fukuda, if I'm remembering his name correctly, is actually a huge Star Wars fan. I will actually make reference to this later on, especially with Destiny, but for some elements, there are some things that they kind of copied over, like he would specifically copy over from Star Wars into Seed, or in particular, Seed Destiny. But that was only one thing that kind of irked me with the sound effects, was just that one particular one. I was like, every other beam rifle or like machine gun or suit movements or Gundam movements, familiar sound effects, newer sound effects, especially like with the whole phase shift noises and stuff like that. But the sound effects for that one particular beam rifle just stood out to me. I'm like, why did you use that sound effect of all places? Like, that's something like, it's an iconic sound effect. Why? Why not use a different sound effect? I don't know why. That's something that stuck with me. Sorry about that. Now, here's some really, like, when it comes to Seed, a lot of people tend to praise Seed for the following reasons: is that it's got a lot of story and it's got a lot of action, and they really make it well paced and they put it all together. And that's something that I've commonly heard with a lot of people that talk about Gundam Seed. They're not wrong for the most part. I think this is, they're not looking at a more finer tune to it. So I'll put it this way: Gundam Seed's pacing is actually really good. They do a really good job of managing between the story and action. But there's a difference between the story and the characters. So it becomes kind of like a 60-40. 60% for our characters and then 40% between the story and action. The pacing and balance between those two are fine, but the characters is a little bit of a different story. So, not unfamiliar with most Gundam series. Gundam's not only just about the war, but it's about the characters. Seed is no different from any other Gundam series where they take a lot of focus onto the characters, but not so much so as their interpersonal ordeals. A lot of times with Gundam, we focus on like characters that are having issues or anything like that, or trying to develop from certain things, or overcome obstacles or objectives, right? In Seed, though, they take a lot of elements from Seed and they focus more so on towards the characters. In particular, Cara and Atherin are two main, well, not main characters, but Kira's our main character, but you could basically say that Atherin is also our main character, or side character, however you want to put it. But we focus more about these interpersonal relationships, far more than any other Gundam series at this point in time. Alongside with these interpersonal character relationships that we follow, it becomes more melodramatic. I would akin Gundam Seed to like a soap opera, almost. With the music that plays alongside with what's going on with the characters, it feels very soapy. Feels very, very overtly like melodramatic, with the drama that's in place about like certain characters' feelings or what's going on or their relationship with each other, those sort of things. It's a double-edged sword, to be honest. Back in the day, I wasn't a huge fan of the melodrama. I'm still not a big fan of this type of melodrama. I'm not a soap kind of a person. But this kind of drama, this kind of interpersonal relationships that these characters have is more akin to a lot of the anime that you would see back in the 2000s than you would see in Gundam normally. And that's what made Gundam Seed very, very successful, is because it did something different than what the normal Gundam franchise has done thus far. It's made it a lot more of an interpersonal relationship with our characters, rather than just being like, here's our characters, here's our objectives, how they relate towards either the core elements of the Gundam franchise or how they relate towards like the story. And yes, we have a little bit of their little side stuff, but not so much so. Seed focuses a whole lot more onto that. And I mean, don't get me wrong, there are some things that are nice, and let me just do this. So I'm giving you guys a fair little warning here. So some things I actually really liked when it came to interpersonal relationships, or like the interpersonal like talkings. I really did enjoy a little bit of the whole Kira and Athrun, how Kira was not not going towards the coordinators, and how Athrun was trying to constantly get Kira to come with him, only to be thwarted either because of Kira's emotions or attachment towards his friends in the Archangel, alongside with Athrun being pushed by La Crusade and his not his father, but his ties as a soldier to the Zaft army. I just think that sometimes it got a little bit overdone. It got pushed to different points, but when it got to the pinnacle moments, I think it was like episode, I want to say like, I feel like episode 30-ish or so, I can't remember, where Kira and Athrun had that one major fight, and Athrun sacks the Aegis Gundam to kill Kira. It really hit like a pinnacle point, because it's like they keep on like, I don't want to fight you and I don't want to kill you, but Kira's motivated by his friends and protecting the Archangel, because that's where they are at. And then Athrun's really, really motivated because he wants to be a good soldier, but he doesn't want to hurt his friends or let his friends in the army die too. So it really keeps escalating, keeps getting to a really, really nice little pinnacle. I kind of enjoyed that for the most part. I just think it got way too melodramatic at points, and it got dragged on longer than it should. But it was nice that when it hit its peak, and it got really, really crazy, especially with the fight between those two and how vicious and savage it got. Then again, I would have been pretty pissed off at one of my best friends, in case for Athrun, Nicole died, and then for Kira, we had Toll die. So I could totally get that. They were just so hell-bent on killing each other because both of them lost really, really close friends. The other thing I like too, character-wise, I really do enjoy, post Toll's death, the whole Mirelia and Dierka. I really wanted them to become an actual relationship, because like I kind of like that little like development. That's where like we kind of get these nice little developments with these characters, right? We also get not a whole lot, and I wish we got a lot more with Muru and Mu. I wanted to see more between those two, but we never really get that. And that's a problem with that I had with the series too, was that we get a lot of these subplots, but some of these subplots are not fully developed. And we're just led to like, okay, we can assume that these characters are going to do this, or we're going to assume these characters get together, and because of this. I'm like, no, I want to see it develop. I want to see how I'm the kind of person, I'm the kind of viewer that really likes to watch our characters do stuff and how it develops, not just assume things happen, or because this character is like this, they're gonna end up doing that. No. I want to see it happen. I enjoy that. So it's kind of sad that we didn't get to see a whole lot between Muru and Mu, and same thing with Dierka and Mirelia. Unfortunately, they don't really end up with each other, but I wanted to see more too. Like, why didn't they end up with each other? I'll talk more with Sea Destiny one, because they don't really explore that at all, other than a quick little exposition drop, and that's it. Alright guys, that's all I had for spoilers regarding like the story and stuff like that. I do have a little bit more spoiler that'll be coming up, so just a heads up. But like I was talking about too, when it came to the melodrama of Seed, back then, when I watched it on the second viewing, I really did not like it. I akin a lot of the drama that they have, or this interpersonal drama, much akin to like high school almost. And it's like high schoolers in war. And I'm like, it makes sense because of the age of these characters, but at the same time, I didn't care. It's not the same thing like when you're watching other Gundam series, because yes, other Gundam series deal with like high school as kids, like 15, 16-year-olds fighting in a war. Of course, we're going to have their level of drama. But I think with Seed, it plays so much more towards the melodrama, and that's why it made, again, that successful with other anime series at that time frame, because it's playing with the audience itself. Where the Gundam franchise, for the longest time, had not tried to go with the audience. It tries to do what its own thing was. So Seed kind of broke that away and did that. Again, much more melodramatic, much more dramatic with the characters' interpersonal relationships than any other Gundam series thus far. I do want to talk about a spoiler here, so... Oh, wait, sorry. Spoiler here. Big spoilers here. You're going to want to fast forward this quite a bit, okay? I'll leave this here. And, give our viewers some time here to jump out. So one of the big spoilers with interpersonal relationships too that I want to talk about with this whole melodrama. In the first third of Seed, we get the whole ideology behind how do I put this? The whole concept between the coordinators and naturals. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this after this, but I really want to touch on this part here before I jump in because it's more with our characters, and it's the relationship between Cara and Flay. Oops, let me get to our Flay here. So there's a particular scene in Gundam Seed that's very, very controversial at the time of its original release in Japan. You see, Cara gets into a relationship with Flay, and they bump uglies. They get to do the wild tango. They get to have fun. Unlike most characters in the Gundam franchise, they get the boogie. But not saying that other characters in the Gundam franchise does not get to have fun or anything like that. A lot of times it's implied. Again, this is what I'm mistaken here. More with the Japanese culture trying to be more of implying it, but not showing it or enacting it, right? Gundam Seed is another time where it breaks, again, a little bit of the tradition. And this is the first time we actually see in Gundam that one of our main characters or a character or characters in Gundam actually has a sexual relationship. Now, what we get in Seed is kind of like, okay, Kira's getting out from bed, and then we see Flay laying in bed. We're going to get some extra scenes, and I'll talk a little bit more about that when I talk about the special edition movies. But back then, this was a little bit controversial because this was released during prime time, not prime time, but like a prime time for Japanese viewership, and a lot of kids were watching it, so a lot of censors were concerned or worried. But this aired on Japanese prime time, so this became a huge issue regarding like censorship. Honestly, the scenes were very, very tame, such as what I'm showing you right now. I can get away with it. This is very, very tame because all we see is that basically a nude, but we don't actually see her nude. She's covered in the sheets where she's at. Flay laying in the bed, and then Kira leaving, implying that they had sex. That's pretty much it. It was a very big deal for Japanese censors. So, yeah, I thought it was a big deal when I remember watching this as a Gundam series. I was just surprised because, you know, I'm still a young kid. Oh, like, not young kid. I was a young teen. I was like, wait a second. Did they actually bump the uglies? Did they actually do the wild tango? That they did. Kira got lucky. And yeah, that was basically it. I was a little bit surprised about that in a Gundam series. We're not going to see anything like this, I don't think, ever again necessarily. We get kind of like, again, more implied things with other characters in other Gundam series. We even get some implications in the past, but we're not going to see anything as of right now that I can remember like this. So Seed broke a very fine barrier for Gundam. I wouldn't say a tradition, but a fine barrier in Gundam, for better or for worse. Honestly, I thought it was an interesting, risque one, especially for something as tame as Gundam. Oops. All right, and that's all I had to say about the spoilers regarding that one. I just want to make sure that everyone who jumps back into this little portion here can jump back without any issues here. So another aspect of Gundam Seed that I was not liking a whole lot, or maybe it's just a personal thing too, but one thing that kind of irked me a lot in Gundam Seed was a lot of these gun standoffs. Now, it's not unfamiliar in the Gundam franchise, again, that we see a lot of these moments where, you know, characters are pointing guns at each other and stuff like that, and, like, in these, like, dramatic moments. But there's so many moments in Seed that it becomes kind of ridiculous. Like, it's an overt usage and it loses a lot of its emphasis or a lot of its power. And also coming from a person that's all about firearms, I totally get it, but at the same time, if you're not gonna pull the trigger, don't point a gun. And this constant overt usage of it kind of plays too much towards the emotions, right? They're going too much of this emotional stuff. Again, with this melodrama of Seed, this overt usage of these gun standoffs or these gun pointing gets too much way too redundant, loses a lot of impact. The first couple of times I've seen it, okay, yeah, it plays a point, but then you get scenes that just don't really play out that well. No, I'm not gonna spoil it. I'm not gonna spoil it. Sorry, I was debating if I'm gonna put spoilers. I'm not gonna spoil it. But for our, well, since I already did it, oops. So spoiler here. One thing that kind of got irritated was the whole Coggley with the gun, right? God, she is a trigger happy girl. First time we see her with a gun pointing at Athrun was an actual situation where she had to utilize a gun to shoot Athrun, right? Later on, there's a second time she points a gun at Athrun after she steals his gun while they're stranded on an island, right? And after she shoots him all that, Athrun captures her, then releases her, and they're staying together in this little cave just to survive the night. Coggley then steals Athrun's gun again and threatens to shoot him and decides to not shoot him but throw the gun and all this emotional stuff. Cool, awesome. All right, that all held a point. Much later on, after Athrun supposedly kills Cara and is captured by Orb, he's sitting in, was it Orb's ship or was it the Archangel? I can't remember. I don't think it's the Archangel, but Coggley confronts Athrun regarding killing Cara, and she has a gun with her again, and she points it right at him, and she's holding him and all that jazz. And I'm like, why are we at this again? Why are we doing this again? I get it that you are pissed off about Athrun killing Cara, and you were probably wanting to kill him, but let's be honest, Coggley, you're not gonna kill the dude. So I just kind of got frustrated with that. Like there's other scenes in the series too that gets a little repetitious with the whole gun ordeals. Kind of like later on, Athrun confronts Lacus in the theater, and he points a gun at her, saying like so why did you do it, Lacus? Why did you betray why did you betray Zaf? Why did you betray us? I'm like, are you? I get it that you're trying to be a soldier and whatnot, but like if you're gonna point a gun, you're pointing it to destroy something, right? And everyone's got their fingers on the triggers, and it's like, ugh. I mean, there's other moments where like it works out very well, like the scene where Morelia was trying to kill Dierka with a knife, and then after all this confrontation and like struggling in the hospital room or the little nursing room, Flay comes in, finds the gun in the room, and then tries to shoot Dierka, and then Morelia stops him. So that was like another good example of like, hey, gun pointing situation or gun standoff situation works well within the scenario. But then we get other ones that just kind of like try to overdo it, just doesn't feel right, and just felt overused and overdramatic. The melodrama, right? So yeah, that's something I wanted to get off in regards to that one. All right, I'm done with the spoilers here, folks, so you can come back now. So another thing I want to talk about Seed regarding the story itself is, again, Seed does use some elements from the Gundam franchise overall, like the core elements that we're already familiar with. Be it war is hell, whoever wins the innocent lose. Very, very heavily emphasis on that one. But one big one that they don't really emphasize on, and I think that C does a really good job bringing it, we kind of see this originally with Gundam X and a couple of other series too, but not really so much so because we had the whole old type versus new type. So Seed, we kind of get the old type versus new type, but it's naturals versus coordinators. Naturals being naturally born humans, coordinators are genetically altered humans, kind of like Gattaca almost. I was just thinking about like how it was related to Gattaca. I'm like, oh man, we're copying, but that's not original in itself too. There's a lot of other things. Anyways, my point being about regarding that humans versus genetically altered humans is that C tackles not entirely, but it tackles the concept of kind of like this racist or speciesism. I don't know how to call it because it's like I would think it's more speciesism. Like, you know, like how naturals feel very uncomfortable or superior to the coordinators, and it's an unnatural thing to alter your body or alter your children to make them something that they're not supposed to be. It's not natural. Whereas coordinators are like, well, we want to give our children the best chances of life, the better things. We want to build them towards something that they can go off of in the future. Again, that brighter future. And we don't care about this whole concept of, a natural body or anything. We want to improve. We don't want these insufficient or inadequate bodies. So like the series kind of tackles it, but doesn't dive fully into it. It's great because I almost want to say it's kind of like an X-Men kind of a thing, where the hatred in this series between the two species, I would say, gets really intense. It's kind of impressive, like story-wise. Like I'm like, wow, I haven't seen anything like this in Gundam. The closest one I would get to is in Gundam X, where we would have like the whole ordeal about old types trying to kill off new types or utilizing them like weapons, and their hatred for new types because they want to believe that they are the superior being. And it's like the exact same thing with the naturals and coordinators, but they take that and dial it to an 11. They take it to a whole new level. And utilizing the war, they really emphasize on the few elements that they use from the core Gundam franchise. They emphasize it a whole lot. Unfortunately, this is where I said, like, they don't play with it more. They don't really dive into it because, again, the series is not like how other series where it's focusing on the story and the events that occur and really paying attention to like the overall thematic themes. The theme of Seed is the melodrama of our characters, and everything else in the story and whatnot is down here. So I felt it was a great shame that Seed didn't really play to a lot of these elements and go a whole lot more into it. There are some clip episodes that really kind of talk about it, but I feel like those are really throwaway and they're not really diving into it with our characters and with the situations of the stories. I think we could have done a whole lot more with it, but again, Seed doesn't do enough with what they present to us. But it's great that they were introducing to something new. We do kind of see this again later on, but not by a whole lot. So I'm kind of like just doing like here and there. One last thing I do want to talk about that kind of irked me about Seed. Now I talked about how they did a good pacing between the action and the story. There's some hiccups with the story. I already talked about clip shows, right? So if I'm not mistaken, there was a recap episode and then 2 clip episodes, and they were back to back. There were 3 total for Gundam Seed. Really not necessary, not required at all, since we get a nice little prologue in every single episode, like the little stinger to tell us what happened last episode, or building us up like historical wise, like what had happened in this, before the series or anything like that. But these episodes were a waste. Along with that too, we get a lot of flashbacks. There's gonna be a joke. Well, there was a joke or ongoing joke with Fukuda, the director who does both Seed and Seed Destiny. How Tomino has Kill 'Em All Tomino, Fukuda has Flashback 'Em All Fukuda. Because Fukuda constantly uses flashbacks. It's as if he doesn't trust us to remember what had happened with our characters. He constantly uses flashbacks to tell the story, rather than letting the characters talk about how they feel and then utilizing that within the next scene, or emphasizing that more with like the characters' interactions. We don't get any of that. What we do is we constantly get these flashbacks, which eat up more screen time, which eat up more time throughout the episodes, which eats up more time throughout the entire series. I swear, if we recycled all the time that we saw flashbacks, maybe use a few flashbacks for poignant moments, but not frequent. It's not just that there's a frequency of flashbacks, but it's the same type of flashbacks we see from previous episodes. It's so abundant. It's ridiculous. Now, I would complain about stock footage when it came to action sequences in the past. It didn't occur to me that the stock footage complaint really is with these flashbacks. It really kills and hinders this series because, again, if we recycled all those flashbacks, took out those 3 clip/recap episodes, we would have more time to talk about what's going on with our characters, maybe add in a little more character interactions or relationships, develop more on our subplots, develop furthermore on this whole speciesism between coordinators and coordinators and naturals, right? And even more so, build up an actual ending for the finale. And I'll talk about the finale in just a little bit too. But if we spent all that time doing all that, we could have fixed it for something that could be better. So the whole usage of these flashbacks and flashback them all for Fukuoka really drove this series down for me. Now, as for the final episode itself, it was okay. Honestly, everything went along with the storyline and went very well with it. I just didn't feel like it was a fantastic story. The problem with I had with the ending is that we don't get a true epilogue or what had happened, everything that built up towards this really wasn't sufficient enough for an ending, and it felt very abrupt. And that's a quick version I could say about it without spoilers. But, hey folks, I'm going to talk about the final episode spoilers, so you might want to tune me out for the next few minutes again if you don't want spoilers. So for the final episode here, and I already elated a little bit about that, but I want to talk a lot more about it. Kind of like what I already said about how there's too many flashbacks, clip episodes, and recap episodes that could have been put towards building up to it. The last few episodes kind of ramped up kind of quickly, but not too fast, right? It was going at the same momentum that Seed has constantly been doing so far with the characters, the story, and the action. Did a very good job of getting up to that point. Problem with it, though, is that the final episode didn't have enough time on its own to really develop. Once Patrick Zala had been killed off and all the other crazy stuff had happened with Genesis, we really didn't have much of an ending. I guess they were trying to do kind of like a Gundam-esque ending where, like, oh, Amuro gets found by White Base, so Kira gets found by Atheron and his sister Kagali. But we've developed so much with our characters, at least with the original Gundam. Everything was told within the story, right? Everything was told in the story. So we know the events that were going to happen. We know what's going to happen in a sense. We know how things are going to end off. And everything built up to a crescendo with that once the war finally reached a peace treaty in 0080 of January 1st, everything felt nicely ended. The final episode of Escape ended very well, even though we didn't get an epilogue. The closest thing we got to epilogue was, oh, you know, Zeon and the Federation signed a peace treaty, signifying the end of the 1-year war. We don't even get that in Seed. So what happens, like, at the ending of Seed here, after, you know, Genesis is destroyed and all that jazz, we don't even get an idea of what happens between Zaft and the Alliance. We don't get an idea if, you know, there was a true peace treaty that was signed or the war actually end. All we got was an ending with our characters. Now, I can see from an argument standpoint that, yes, because our series has focused so much on our characters, that it makes sense that it ends right there and it's great. Here's why I argue back with those people who would say, like, oh, it had a good ending for our characters. What about an epilogue? I want to know what happens to our characters afterwards. Does Atheron go back to Zaft? Does Kira end up happily with Lacus? Unlike everybody else, Kira doesn't express the same relationship that he had with Lacus like he did with Flay or anybody else. Like, well, he didn't have any other relationship, but he doesn't reciprocate in some manner or form. So we're kind of like left off like Lacus, where we don't know where things kind of stand off with how the series ends for our characters. Yay, Kira got found. Yay, Kira is not dead. But guess what? We don't know what's going to happen afterwards. What's going to happen to the crew of Archangel? They fled away from the Alliance. So they're branded traitors. Are they all going to get executed? We don't know what had happened. In fact, we don't find out any of this until we get into Destiny, which is awful. We should have some kind of conclusion, not only for the story itself, but for our characters, if you're going to argue so much so or focus so much on our characters. We don't get that in the ending of Seed. So it's really frustrating. Additionally to that one, again, with the story, we don't even know what happens. I wanted to know if Zaft and the Alliance signed a treaty or something like that. They ended things off. No. We don't find out anything until Destiny, which doesn't give us a whole lot. And I was kind of sad about that, because the series, all the way up to that point, was a pretty good watch. I wanted to see what happens. I wanted to see the payoff, right? We had the journey. We're at the ending now. We need the payoff at the ending. We don't get much of a payoff. So that was something that irked me about Seed's ending. To would be actually a pretty good series, I would say, thus far. But it's just it's disappointing that they didn't get that far with it. All right, folks. So spoilers is now ending here. I'm done talking about the spoilers. You can come back and listen now. Other things I do want to talk about. So of course, I talked about our story. I talked about our characters. Really got into a lot of that. But next, I want to talk about is the action of Seed. It is fast, fun, and heavy. Much of the episodes, it reminds me of like Gundam Wings pacing with the story. Not so much as a story. I would, if I put it this way, it's the characters and action. It's the story and the action with the Oh my gosh, I'm getting myself kind of mixed up here. It's usually the characters and action, then we have the story. It's the usual composition of what Gundams focus on. That's 60 to 40%, right? With Seed, though, we now have it as story, action, and then characters, 60-40 total. So the action really goes well with the story. A lot of it's very fast, intense, hard-hitting stuff. I love how they utilize the phase shift in the combats, too. It's kind of a cool mechanic because usually we hear this in the Gundam franchise, but we don't really truly see it. Whereas like, oh no, the suit's operational time, or you know, the beam rifle doesn't have enough energy or something like that. It doesn't happen as often, but it does happen. And surprisingly enough, for a real robot, C does a little bit of a better job in that one, at least with the phase shift armor. The phase shift adds a nice little plot device that like makes it like, hey, we need to get this fight done right now, or else something's gonna happen and we're not gonna be able to defend ourselves appropriately. So I thought that was kind of a cool, fun little thing that Seed added in there with the phase shift and adds more to the action. However, the only thing is that, and it was still persistent from a decade ago to now, that I caught on, is that the action does use quite a bit of stock footage. Not as much as I remember it to be, but there's a lot of stock footage in Seed. A lot of same actions between launches or between launches to firing, those sort of things. The worst one, and I did actually like a little tally mark per episode, right? The very worst one, this is super minor spoilers, but this is in regards to stock footage. Episode 30, the Buster Gundam's animation to where he like puts his long beam rifle together and then fires it, was done 3 times. Look, I get it with stock footage with other Gundam series or whatnot. Like we see stock footage, right? But Seed has the egregious habit of not only utilizing stock footage from previous episodes or whatnot, but using it multiple times in one episode. Now, I just told you about the one that I've seen the most in one episode, which was just the Buster doing his long beam rifle done 3 times. There was other stock animation that's used multiple times throughout an episode. At best, was like 2. But I know, like, I remember having some arguments with Seedlings in the past, or other wingers as well, where they were saying like, oh yeah, well, Wing has a lot of stock footage too. Yes, Wing does have a lot of stock footage, especially later on with either the Tauruses doing a sweeping beam shot, or the cascading planet defensors from the Virgos or anything like that, to the Heavy Arms doing its arm actions, like the shooting arm actions. But they were only used like once per episode. Stock footage animation in Seed did not exceed more than 2 times per episode from what I can remember. Seed, however, takes that egregious habit of utilizing stock footage when it shouldn't have to use stock footage. I kind of want to tie everything together because I feel like Seed really uses a lot of its bad timing. Like, a lot of the time that it uses for the flashbacks, the recap episodes, the stock footage could have been used to tell more story, more different action sequences, and focusing more on a lot of the story elements that they brought into Gundam Seed. I think it's some poor direction right there, and I wish that they actually focused more on these aspects. Could have made Seed a lot better or a heavier contender. Other than that, let me see here. I had some like random things I notated down here. So yeah, of course we had the 3 recap episodes. I already talked about that, and 2 of them are back to back. It's episodes 26 and 27. So if you do watch this for the future, those clip episodes, they kind of have some pertinent things. It's not by a whole lot. If you want to get some like inner character thoughts, I would say check it out, but speed through it maybe. Plot shielding. Now, plot shielding is not unfamiliar with the Gundam franchise. Some characters have some pretty thick plot shield cuts. But Seed has not a whole lot of plot shielding necessary, but the worst example of a plot shield. I'm just gonna leave it at that for you folks. Like, Seed has a lot of plot shielding in here, or at least a very strong case, or strong cases of plot shielding, which irks me. I'm gonna leave it at that for those who don't want spoilers, but spoilers here, and definitely you don't want to hear this one out if you don't want spoilers. Yeah. Check it out. Check me back out in a little bit. I'll give you a flash animation for when it is. Okay, so let's go ahead and begin with that spoiler, right? If you're a fan of Seed or have watched Seed before, you know exactly what I am talking about. I am talking about Jesus Christ Kira Yamato here. Look, we've had some pretty plot shieldy events. I think the worst one so far that I can think of off the top of my head was Gundam Wing with Hiro in episode, I think it was 12, if I remember correctly, doing the self-destruct, is it 10 or 12? Self-destruct of the Wing Gundam, and he's at at ground zero, right by the cockpit. And he gets flown from the cockpit from what would be like a 2-story building or something like that, tumbling around and in his own pool of blood. Didn't die. Maybe some broken bones or whatnot, hurt, but not dead. Kind of explained away, right? That was pretty bad. I'm not gonna lie, that's a bad plot shield. Seed is the worst though. So I already talked about it. I think it was like episode like 15 or was it 30? I can't even remember now, but between the two, Athrun and Kira fighting really, really hard, and Athrun believingly that he killed Kira because. So we have Athrun, who basically used the Eggies to capture the strike in their heated fight. He takes off from it, and then we only get like a split shot of Kira, like, huh? And then the Aegis blows up. There is no way, unless there was like, between those split seconds, that we would have like something that like somehow Kira got out. Instead, what we get next is that, of course, we come to the scene where like, oh yeah, everyone's collecting the pieces of the 2 Gundams that are destroyed on the beach, and then Athrun gets captured by Orb and all that jazz like that. And then an episode or 2 later, it's explained that, Priest Malthus, I think it's Malthus' name, I can't remember, found you and then brought you over to the plant. What? That is one terrible explanation of how he survived the events. Not only is it explained away, we don't see any of it. How in the ever-living hell did Kira survive an explosion point blank with his cockpit sliced open and exposed? Did he survive that? That is the worst case of plot shielding I've ever seen in Gundam. Ever. I mean, we've had some pretty bad plot shields, like, oh yeah, this character won't die or whatnot because of this or whatnot. But Kira, I never understood it for the longest time, but now I finally understood it more so, like why he was nicknamed Jesus Christ Kira Yamato. Alright, folks, for those of you who are, don't want spoilers, I am now done with the spoilers portion here regarding the plot shielding. One more fun thing I want to talk about when it came to Seed that I actually liked. Now, because I had watched this in Japanese originally, I did get to hear the voice acting for the Japanese, which sounds not bad. I mean, it's fantastic in its own respects. Has a lot of more emotion and captivates that than the English voice actors do, but I think the English voice actors do a good job on their own too. Saying some of the voice actors and actresses not fitting their role 100%. However, During the action sequences, and that's something I want to talk a little bit more about the action too, is that I really enjoyed from Seed was the battleship commands. We kind of get that with some of the other Gundam series, more so with the older ones, like in the original Gundam and Zeta Gundam. We kind of lose that out as we go forward in any other Gundam series going forward, but I really miss that, like, you know, like, prepare the mega particle beam cannon, fire! Turn 60 degrees, now! Dodge! Those kind of things. I love those, like, battleship commands, or like Bright yelling it out, or something of that nature. Those are kind of fun and exciting, and then watching the ships, like, we don't get to see too much in the past. C does a lot of good justice in that aspect, because we get a lot of what I would call is the ship battles, right? We don't get, like, necessarily ship battles until we get further on. But with the Archangel, because we get, like, a lot of these cool weapon callouts. Nataro and Muru, when they call out the weapons around, so cool. I liked it both in English and Japanese. I like Japanese more, so I'll get to that one. But I do enjoy it, like, when they're calling Hell Darts, like, launch the Hell Darts, get the Longerin. Longerin readied up, fire! The Tannhausers, fire! Like, I'm mixing that up with Destiny too, but I'm like, I really enjoy a lot of those battleship commands. Like, turn starboard, like 2 degrees, like dodge. Like, it's so fun. I enjoy that, the emphasis, the action, and not only that, we get the call outs, but we also get the follow-up action sequences with it too. So we actually see the Archangel do a lot more. We see the Archangel, like, barrel roll, dodge, move out of the way, fire, using different types of weapons. Even though sometimes we do get a lot of stock footage out of it, I enjoyed it though. Tomahawks, it's so fun and cool. But nothing's as cool as when the Japanese voice actresses for Muru or Nataro call it out. The English ones do a good job, right? It makes it exciting. But man, the Japanese voice actresses, they turn it up to an 11. My favorite. I think some of you might have heard me, like, if you watch my live streams, not of the live stream reviews, just like random live streams, and I'm playing like a shooting game or something with ships or mechs, right? You might hear me say it, and it's because I quote Nataro here. Specifically, she says this. So one of them is the Valiance, which is a side beam, a long beam rifle, or not beam rifle, side beam cannon for the Archangel. I'm pretty sure it's not the ones that are on the top, because it was called the Longerins, I think. So we got the Valiance on the side. And my favorite is when they say Valiance fire. So Nataro in English will go like, you know, get the Valiance ready. Valiance fire! And it's exciting, right? But the Japanese voice actress for Nataro, she puts a little spin to it, and it sounds so cool. So the Valiants are called Valiantos. So guys, and in Japanese, te is fire, right? So Valiantos te. But the way that Nataro's voice actress says it, she goes, Variantos ute! And I just like, oh my god, every single time she says it with this huge emphasis. Like, so, Variantos ute! And I was like, oh, dang, that's so cool. I really enjoy that. I don't know why. It's a pure joy from hearing Nataro calling out those commands. So, this is something I enjoyed from Seed. Yeah. That's pretty much it regarding that portion right there. I do want to talk about my favorite suits from Seed here. So, I know some people don't consider it, but I want to be a little bit more considerate for folks out there that do consider it. So, for those of you who are not interested or don't want too much of a spoilers, go ahead and skip pretty far into this. I will be talking about the suits right now, or my favorite, one of my segments here is my favorite suit from the series. So those of you who are willing to stick around here, so if you're not familiar with this, there's a lot of suits, like, so every series that gets introduced into the Gundam franchise, so are a lot of suits are introduced. We either get new suits, redesigns, new battleships, those sort of things. Seed is no different to that, because we get a lot of new suits. I'm actually really liking a lot of the suit designs that they brought into this series here. We even get some familiar, kind of like Xeon-esque designs, which I'm all for, like, kind of like, not like saying it's a direct copy, but kind of like an homage right to it. And I think Seed does a nice job with it. I want to just start off with some honorable mentions, right? So my first honorable mention is the first suits that we see in the series, which is a Jin. And you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Like, I like the Jin's design itself because it reminds me a lot like a Zaku. It's got a lot of these like little functions and features that something about the Seed. And now the Seed designer is Kunio Okawara. Forgive me for missing it. If you're not familiar with this designer, he is the same designer that has done plenty of other Gundam designs or the original Gundam stuff too. He's a very big Gundam designer for the Gundam franchise. And I love his mech designs. I think a lot of his work is very key and signature, and it's what drives me to like a lot of the suit designs themselves too. So again, going back to like this, like I love how it's like kind of like, if you think about it, it's like a Zaku but redesigned, and I liked it a lot. It's pretty cool. It gets at least an honorable mention. I want to keep it short, but I really like the Jin's design. Another one too that's kind of like Zaku-esque, or you can almost say like Goof almost. It's a CQ. A CQ? I cannot pronounce it correctly. This guy kind of looks, it's basically if you take a knight's armor and you put it on a Zaku and then kind of make it a little bit more spiffy. And that's what you get with this guy right here. Kind of a cool, this is Raul Lacroix's suit. Kind of hard to say his name. It's kind of Frenchish, I think. I'm not mistaken here. But this is a neat suit. I like some of its armaments and stuff like that. It's another honorable mention. One more I want to throw out there, and this is a late suit that shows up in the series, is a Gwazi. Gwazi, I can't remember how it's enunciated in the series itself. The Gwazi. It reminds me, and this is before Unicorn, but it reminds me of a lot of like Unicorn Xeon, like the sleeves designs. You can almost say too, it's very reminiscent to the Zazabi, at least with the head and chest area a little bit. Not so much that the head's elongated enough like the Zazabi, but if you see how like the eye placement in the forehead and then the chest itself, very similar to a Zazabi. But I really like the suit's design. It's really cool. It's a more beefier, robust looking of the Jin. I like it a lot. It's really cool. I forgot what's over here. I'm not gonna I'm not saying a shout out, but I just want to point out a suit that like it's very okay-ish. Because it's supposed to look like the Strike itself, but it's not, and it's a mass-produced version of it. The Strike Dagger, this is the suit I was also talking about, where its beam rifle sounds like something straight out of a sound effect straight out of the Star Wars movie. It's okay. I think the one thing that, like, usually the one thing I don't like about GMs, and it's kind of weird because it's like I like the suits from Wing, for an example, because it has that weird scream, but I don't like it on a GM because the way of its curvature. I don't know why. It's kind of weird. And I kind of like it how it doesn't have a GM head, if that makes sense. I'm very glad it does not have a GM head. It has like kind of a very similar body to the Strike, but no GM head. It's an okay design. Not bad. Not bad at all. So those are some honorable mentions here. Oh, wait, I wanted to show you some weirder ones. Let me see with this one right here. Okay, yeah. Just some weirder ones. Longest time, ever since I watched it a decade plus ago, I hated the Baku, or Bakau. I call it the Bakau, because that's how I remembered it in the subtitle, Bakau, but Baku is what it's called. I always thought it was a weird name, because I thought it was trying to be like a weird goat thingy, just because of the way it's named, but it's kind of like, almost like a wolf. Almost, not quite. And I think it's kind of cool when it actually like does all the running and stuff like that. Like, I actually like it when it's like this. I don't like it when it does like the whole like skidding stuff. I think it looks kind of lame. Yeah, there we go. Like when it does that, I think it's kind of lame. It's like a transformer, but not really. But I really like it when it does all the running and stuff like it's kind of neat, kind of cool. And like, you know, the beam saber in the head, not bad. For the longest time, I thought it was a super lame design, super stupid, and all. I was very jaded back then. Now I'm very more relaxed, and I'm like, hey, I have fun with this. And I thought that was kind of a cool one. The Lego, very similar to that one too. It's more the Commander-esque type version of it. This is Andrew Waltfield and Aisha's is Aisha right? Yeah, Aisha's suit. But yeah, it's like they're both, I think both of them are 2 cockpits if I remember correctly, and I don't know why, but it's an interesting one. Interesting suit. Now, for the first thing I want to talk about, I don't really talk about battleships enough, honestly. And I actually really like the Archangel's design. I don't care for it with the space boosters really, but I really love the Archangel's design. Something about it, even though it's very white base SE, right? I used to like the Nahel Argama for the longest time. Raw Kylum kind of gets a little honorable mention to me, and of course, white base holds a special place in my heart. I think a lot of Gundam fans kind of have that too, at least the UC elitists. But Archangel is a fantastic looking suit, fantastic looking battleship. I really love the design. I also love a lot of its weapon placements. Like we get I think it was like the Tannhauser is what I think it's called. I can't. Let's see if we can spot. Now the Longren, if I'm not mistaken here, should be this one right here, which is 2 double cannons that pop up. We get the Valiants, which are right here. It kind of pops off, and then it flips over, which is kind of cool. Over here we get missile pods. Back we also get right here was these like machine guns that are anti-air, which are really cool. Even though they overdo that in the series too much with the stock footage. I love that animation though. It's kind of cool. We got the Valiant, Godfrey's. Oh wait, I maybe I'm mixing them up. I keep getting them mixed. Between that's the Godfrey or this is the Godfrey and that's the Longren or that's the Longren. But let me show you guys. Let me see. Hey, we can figure it out. See this is what I'm talking about with the Valiants. Pops out and then flips over and then it elongates itself, right? The Longren. All right. Place your bets, folks. I forgot it. I'm pretty sure the Longren is the top ones because they keep on referring to the Longren, and then the Godfrey should be the bottom one. Place your bets now. Oh, dang it! Okay, so the Longren was the bottom one. I find the animation for this really, really cool. I just think that it doesn't really fit in there though. But I like the animation of that, and then the beam fire for it too, which is a cool like deep rose red with blue around it. Really, really cool. And where is the Godfrey? So the Godfreys are the twin cans. See what I'm talking about? Like, so it pops up, comes up like that, and then it forms like that. I think those are cool too. That's all that. Is it Hellfire or Helldart? Helldart missiles, yeah. Helldart missiles right behind here. They come out and they fire off. They're usually like missile like counter missiles and stuff like that. So it's so cool. Do we have Lungstons? Is it the machine guns? Yeah, Lungston machine guns. They just pop up and if I'm not mistaken here, the Lungston is actually the same Lungston machine guns that are in the head Vulcans for any of the suits in this series. Because if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong. But it's like a miniaturized version of the Lungston in their like the Gundam's foreheads or in the sides, whichever they use for the suit's Vulcans. Yeah, those are some aspects I just wanted to point out were really, really cool when it came to the Archangel. Really like this ship. All right, I think we're gonna get to actual suits that I really like, my top tier suits of the series. I mentioned like a lot of honorable mentions so far. I do want to throw in, this is probably my favorite ship of the entire series. Granted, there's a bunch of other ships too, but I really like the Archangel in this series. It's a really cool ship. My first one I want to talk about is the M1 Astray. This is Orb's mobile suit. Very reminiscing to the Strike Gundam because they are the ones that also designed a lot of the Gundams, if I remember correctly from the story here. But the Astrays look really, really cool. If you're familiar with the red frame Astray, I'll actually be talking about the red and blue frame Astray shorts too. But this is a pretty cool one. I like a lot of its design. Unfortunately, we don't get to see it be used a whole lot other than defensively. But I think it's a really cool looking design. Really cool looking suit. Very sleek. Got little points, but the points are not bad points. I usually don't like pointy suits sometimes, but this is a really cool one. I absolutely have... Let me double check some things here. I'm spoiling it a little bit. Oh, yeah. Okay. I have a hidden love for Seed suits. For the longest time, anyone who's known me, I don't talk... whenever I hear or talk about Seed, it's always bad. Two things I never talked bad about for Seed, though, and I always praise Seed for this, was the music and the suit designs. I never trashed about the suit designs, but never openly talk about how much I love some of the suit designs from Seed. Because it's like, I hate Seed so much, but I really like their suits. Yeah, it's one of those. I have a secret love for the Dual Gundam. Dual Gundam, I don't know why. It's like, it's out of all the 5 Gundams that we are first introduced to, it's the most basic design. It reminds me a lot of the original Gundam with, like, it's just basic shield, beam rifle, has like a rocket propelled grenade underneath it. I think it's a grenade, right? I could be wrong. Yeah, it's a grenade launcher. It's a rocket propelled grenade launcher. And then but what made me also fall in love even furthermore is when it gets its armor, its assault shroud. Because the assault shroud, even though it makes it look really, really bulky, it makes it look really cool and formidable. Reminds me a little bit of the Gundam Alex, and why I like the Gundam Alex too. But I didn't like it with the Choberham armor on. It looks stupid. But this is like, what if we had the Choberham armor on the Gundam, but make it really cool and useful? And that's what the assault shroud armor for the Dual Gundam is like. Really, really love the Dual Gundam. It's one of my secret loves, secret favorites. And I feel like it doesn't get enough love in this series. It's a suit that's piloted by Yizak, who I don't like a whole lot. And I feel it's an absolute shame that we don't get like a good usage out of the duel. Although we get some cool moments of it here and there, especially towards the end as well. So my next favorite is the Strike Gundam, but I just want to show the base level of the Strike Gundam so you understand which one I actually do like. So the Strike Gundam is a pretty neat design. It's very basic in its form, like just like the Dual Gundam. The only thing that's different between the two is, of course, Strike Gundam has a backpack system. Between the gimmicks of most main Gundams being like a core fighter or a backpack-esque kind of a system, I'm not a huge fan of those two because I always find them too gimmicky, but Strike does it okay. I don't really care too much for it. But what I do like about the Strike, though, is when it's in its Ale Strike form, or the Ale Strike backpack. I really like this look overall. It gives it a little bit more of that beef from the backside, basically. It makes it look like this huge, heavy thrusters, and then you got this nice, sleek, kind of like techie-looking body in the front. So I really do enjoy a lot of what the Ale Strike looks like. Its armaments are basic, and I only need basic. I don't need to go too crazy. Which brings me to my final and my absolute favorite suit of the series. I think anybody who's watched Gundam Seed will love this suit. It's the same equivalent of anyone who watches Gundam Wing will love the Wing Zero. My favorite suit of Gundam Seed is the Freedom Gundam. It is, I don't know, something about it just screams America. It's a really cool looking suit that has a lot of functions and utilities behind it. Super advanced suit. Again, it's an overpowered suit in itself too, especially in the hands of Cara. Very, very formidable. There's also some other cool scenes too, like when we see it a couple of times where it opens up its wings and it's kind of like very angelic looking. The series does have a lot of these tones of angelic or biblical things too, but I really like the look of it when it looks angelic. Really love a lot of its auto aiming capabilities and how it fires off with all of its beams. It's really cool. The cheater's suit, it's the lazy man suit. It's Kira's suit. I don't know how else to put it, but you can look at it like it's a cheese suit, but at the same time, it's a cool suit. Also, again, like I said, it screams America. What screams America is just it has so many guns on it. The cool thing about it too, it's like concealed too. All the guns on it, it's pretty much you can't see them, with the exception of like a couple of them, I guess. But honestly, unless you know what it looks like, it's all style. And then it's guns out. I like it. It's cool. So those are my favorite suits of Gundam Seed. And let me go ahead and signal for all of our viewers who do not want spoilers. Okay. So I'm going to go on and move on to our next portion here for our fans who do not want to get spoilers. This is for all of our newbies. I'm new to the Gundam franchise. Should I start off with Gundam Seed first? Yes, you could start off with Gundam Seed first. My old decades-long bias and jadedness aside, yes, start off with Gundam Seed first. I do recommend it. Reasons for this is the following: is that this is a start off of its own timeline, so you don't have to worry about other series or anything. It starts its own timeline, and you can focus on from that point. It does have some of the core elements, while not completely focused on them. It does utilize the core elements that you could see from and going to any other series from that point, and it also has a lot of focus on its characters. Well, that's a little bit of a misnomer though, because while we do focus on our characters in other Gundam franchises, just keep in mind that this is a little bit more melodramier and a lot more heavily focused on them. So that's the only anticipate or something that you won't see going into, or expectation you won't see going to any other Gundam series necessarily. But definitely, Gundam Seed doesn't set the wrong expectations when jumping into any other Gundam series. In fact, again, outside of all that jaded biasness, you can start off with this as your first foray into the Gundam franchise. It's got my seal of approval. All right. I think that kind of gave it away a little bit. But as for an overall, I mentioned already, I can't believe it. Since probably like 2006 last time, or 2007 is the last time I watched this series, I'm finally going to eat my words. And I know some of my family and friends are going to be happy to hear this from me, and they're going to rub it in my face, but I'm going to have it on for you all to watch and enjoy. I'm not a man who can't, change my mind or think like, hey, you know what, after re-reviewing things, I could be wrong. And I admit it. Back then, I had a very jaded perspective on this series. I keep looking back at it, but let me just give you a little... You guys can look at it, but... no, sorry. I've had a long time history of being jaded and angry towards Gundam Seed. Various factors into that too, and while most of it is just personal and it has nothing to do with the series itself, I'm glad to say that I can come back to this series and rewatch it, being clear of mind and clear of biasness too. That said, on record, I eat my own words here, folks. Gundam Seed, or Mobile Suit Gundam Seed, is a relatively decent Gundam series. It's a decent entry into the franchise itself, too. I can understand why this series was popular back in 2002 and 2004 for seedlings in the United States. Although the series has a lot of, how do I put this? It does hold up the elements of the core Gundam the core elements of the Gundam franchise, right? War is hell. Innocent, whoever wins the innocent shall lose, and develops a little bit more to it. Adds something to it too, as I mentioned earlier. But the appeal of this series is because it deals more so with the interpersonal relationships with our characters, more focus on our characters, and it felt more like a mainstream anime, which a lot of people can get behind, and I totally get that. That's what drives it for the most part. And while it can appeal towards the modern viewer with a lot of its melodrama and interpersonal stories with our characters, it's a bit too much for the Gundam series, in my opinion, but it's still tolerable. It's still enjoyable to watch to some extent, at least for me. Definitely, though, the story and the action of Seed really holds up and really draws you in there, too. So if you're not too crazy for the melodrama, definitely the story and the action really pulls through and keeps you grounded to the series. Overall, I had a good time watching Seed, revisiting it after all these years. Again, I can't believe I'm saying this and praising the series. Not entirely, but to some extent, I am praising the series for its merits, its actual own merits. Although I would have loved to see a little bit more other changes that better the series. It is still a good series on its own, despite all my bitter hatred towards it. That's eroded away. The series has redeemed itself originally, when I had watched this series, I gave Seed a 1 out of 5. I can confidently tell you here, as of 2021, and on my third rewatch of Gundam Seed, Mobile Suit Gundam Seed gets an unbiased and honest, true to its own series merit, 3 out of 5. That's what I have to say about Gundam Seed. Again, I still feel a little bit conflicted about how I feel about the series as itself, but yeah, I can't help but say that I did not enjoy the series. I enjoyed it. For the longest time, I have been dreading to watch this series because I'm like, I'm not gonna like it. It's gonna suck. It copies the original Gundam. In all honesty, while it does copy some elements of the original Gundam and, some of the designs or some of the things about it, and my prior experiences with seedlings, all of that anger aside, sorry, I'm looking around because I see an ant crawling on my desk. But all that aside, honestly, this is not a bad series. It's not the greatest, like some seedlings proclaim it to be, but it's not a bad series. I enjoyed it. I had fun watching it. With that, I do want to move on to the next one here. I'm continuing along with this review. I'm probably going to break this up in the parts. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. But I do want to talk about the Mobile Suit Gundam Seed Special Edition. This one's got a little bit more shorter. Ooh, excuse me. And I'm just going to give you a quick gist of the Seed Special Edition. So the Seed Special Edition came out a year after the completion of Seed. It's a compilation TV movie, 3-part TV movie compilation of Gundam Seed. Most of the story from beginning to end is the exact same thing you have seen in the series, although it does alter some of our character focuses and, of course, shorten down some things. I will be doing a Gundam, what's the Gundam difference for Seed and Seed Special Edition. But I'm just going to give you a quick gist of some things and what my thoughts are on it. Long story short here on the Seed Special Edition. The biggest changes that I've noticed here were, of course, the removal of episodes and some character subplots completely. This is a 1 hour and 35-minute movies each, so there's 3 of them, clocking at about 4 hours and 45 minutes. So that's a lot of time that needs to be cut out from a 50-episode series. That said, so it cuts off a lot of things for good and for worse. It cuts off a lot of the fat that happened in this series, which there's some fat that I was kind of glad about being cut off. But then there was other things that got cut off that I did not like. A lot of character subplots is what I'm talking about. Not to spoil anyone's in particular, but let's just put it this way. Any and all character subplots either get trashed, and unless your name is not Cara or Athrun, you are not the focus of the movie. The movies are very heavily focused on Cara and Athrun, and they cut things to a point where they kind of stumble on themselves too. I'll get to that in a little bit. Now, with the movie too, the other big changes as well is that they do add some newer scenes to the movies. Some of them were scenes that were cut out from the series, and then some of them were scenes that were made specifically for the movies. They do add some things here and there, but there's not a whole lot to them, so it's not a big thing. The only ones that were really pertinent is the scenes that play pertinent to the character Azrael. Other than that, the pacing in the movie is incredibly fast. Like, this is the most consistent pacing I would have to say. It's very neck-breaky. It's almost to the levels of F91 in the original Gundam, which both of them are neck-breaky, but they're neck-breaky to my pacing, which I liked. Same thing with Seed compilation movies. They were nicely done in that sense. However, what makes it kind of weird too is that they sped up a lot of the action scenes. So like a lot of the action scenes, you could tell if you did a comparison. When I do the what's the Gundam difference, I'm definitely gonna try and get a side by side comparison. But there is a difference between the two. There is it looks regular on the regular one, and then when you watch it on the special edition, it's like sped up. I think the most noticeable part was it in the very beginning when the strike first rises, you can see the flames in the background, and the flames move faster than it does in the actual first episode, because the first episode looked like actual flames, right? And then if you sped it up, like you watch the special edition, it's like moving that fast, so you could tell it's sped up. Even the dialogue scenes are kind of sped up too, in some of them, not all of them, but some of them are sped up. With that said too, the pacing goes alongside with our character stuff, which is mostly Kira and Athrun. Not mostly, majority Kira and Athrun. There's like 99% Kira and Athrun, that 1% for anybody else. That plays pertinent to their story. That's it. That's really it. A lot of the action and story is still there. And with the action particular, I liked about with the movies, they removed a lot of the stock footage of the action. They removed a lot of stock footage of the flashbacks, but they removed a lot of stock footage of the action. I think the only times that we see a lot of stock footage for, besides some of the ship actions, is Buster's animation and then some of the Mobius Zero, Moo's mobile armor he uses in the very beginning. That was it. There was not a whole lot. Personally, I did not like a lot of the subplot removals from this series because, again, I like my characters. I don't like it when they're melodrama, but I like my characters. I like their stories. I like their romances and stuff like that. So I miss a lot of the subplots that we had for our characters. Additionally, some of the subplots that they removed were actually critical to the development or what caused the events for Kira and Athrun, which is very strange because some of the flashbacks that we see, or like the way that they tell the movie sometimes, is that like the scenes that had happened over here were told in a flashback later on, which we never had seen before, which didn't make any sense. But then sometimes when they were using flashbacks, it's stuff that was completely omitted, like when they visited this particular colony and stuff like that. So I think it's kind of weird that they would utilize this flashback storytelling to fix some of the plot holes that they didn't explain how they got to these reactions, like why Athrun feels so strong about this, or they omit certain things that make no sense, like why Kira's doing this. I'm like, why? If you watch the series, it makes sense. If you watch the movies only, you've never seen the series, it makes no sense at all. That being said, if you're new to the Gundam franchise, if I'm new to the Gundam franchise, should I start off with Gundam Seed Special Edition movies? I'm going to say no. Technically you could, but in all honesty, I find that the series is far superior than the movies because a lot of the subplots that they removed are kind of relevant towards Kira and Athrun, and that the way that they're trying to tell the story is kind of very janky. Yes, we still have some core elements and stories from Gundam itself or the Gundam franchise, but it's done in such a hastily way, and it's like kind of cut and chop, cut and chop, cut and chop. It doesn't really work out. It doesn't set the right expectation watching anything else in the Gundam franchise itself. While other compilation movies such as like the original Mobile Suit Gundam or F91 does a much better job of telling a story, I think Seed, you're better off watching the series than you are to watch the movies. Yeah, and basically, again, the movies shoots through all the key points, like key events in the series, and then make Kira and Athrun center stage. Everybody else, forget them. They're not there. If they weren't part of the ship or whatnot, they wouldn't be there to begin with. Because it's all Kira and Athrun. The Cara and Flay show is what the movie is. That being said, if you're asking me, the Seed movies, or the special edition Seed movies, are not bad at all. Again, fast paced, they tell everything condensedly, more focused on Kira and Athrun, but we lose a lot in the process of our other characters. Of course, they take a lot of the stock footage and whatnot, but some of the stock returns as flashbacks, which eats up film time. Overall, it's all right. Again, I would just pick the Seed series over this. That said, Mobile Suit Gundam Seed Special Edition gets a low 3 out of 5. And that's what I gotta say about the special edition. I know it's really, really short. You want an even shorter one? I'll give you guys a little bit of a bonus since you guys are stuck around here this long. I actually watched the Gundam A-Stray red and blue frames. Really quick on those. They're like short 5-minute OVA, or they're 5-minute OVA shorts that were displayed or used as promotional for a lot of Japanese model shops. They focus on 2 different characters. One is Logili, which is a salvage or junk salvager, and then we focus on a mercenary by the name of Guy and his crew. Both of them, well, with Guy's story, it's just after an auction, he's being chased after getting an exclusive part or something like that. And then Guy, he and his crew are hunting down a specific mobile suit to capture. That's pretty much it. They're 5 minutes each, very, very short. I'm not even going to bother giving it a review necessarily, but they're easily accessible videos that you can find right now. I actually watch them on Gundam Info on YouTube, so that's where you can find it. They're not bad. They're okay. Pretty cool suits. That's about it. I'm just gonna leave it like that. Again, there's not much for me to talk about when it comes to the red and blue frame one.